Are you or someone you know looking to buy or sell a home? When you use a HomeGain Realtor to buy or sell a home, you can get $150. Visit HomeGain.com and click on the Promo 150 banner at the top of the page to get started. Compare HomeGain Realtors and choose your favorite. Complete your home purchase or sale transaction with a HomeGain Realtor, and HomeGain will pay you $150. Get started today by going to HomeGain.com. Welcome back, Washington, D.C. Metro, to Real Estate 360 Live. I'm your host, Ryan Sloper, and I'm joined today by my guest, Louis Cammarosano, the general manager of HomeGain. Quick reminder, Real Estate 360 is designed to build the Washington, D.C. Metro's housing and credit markets one house at a time. If you ever have any questions, concerns, or real estate needs, the best number to reach us out to us is 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. Remember, that's an off-air phone number. If you call, just leave your name and phone number and email address, and I'd be glad to get back to you by the end of the day. And if you prefer to reach out via the web, it's realestate360live.com. That's realestate360live.com. I'm going to jump into this week's Market Movers. This segment was brought to you by HomeGain. HomeGain is the place to get you started buying or selling a home, finding a realtor, and getting real estate questions answered. Go to homegain.com today to see what I'm talking about. All you have to do is type in your home address, and you'll get an instant free estimate of your home's value online. It's a great way to monitor your home's value, and it's totally free. So when you get a chance today, make sure you check it out. It's at homegain.com. So for this week's Market Movers, it really the big market mover from this morning, as Louis just spoke before we went to break, was Bernanke was addressing the National Association of Business Economists on the labor market. And just as I had told listeners the week before, I told you guys, if you were listening, that anytime that the Fed speaks or Bernanke speaks, that it really moves markets one way or the other. And this morning, the stock market actually jumped up 1% on a dovish Bernanke, basically saying that he's going to keep an accommodative policy that's needed to cut joblessness. Louis, this is just going to be the continuing trend, I think, for the next 3 or 4 years. Wouldn't you agree?
The only thing he understands is printing money.
Yep. And, keeping this low interest rate policy for an extended period of time,
it requires you to keep it low.
Exactly. And if he didn't learn what happened the last time that this type of policy remained low for an extended period of time with Greenspan, then, I mean, history tends to repeat itself.
Yeah, you get one bubble, then you get a bigger bubble.
Right, and instead of it being in housing, this time it looks like it's going to be in the stock market.
And in the bond market and in the sovereign debt market.
Yeah, and a lot of people aren't talking about a lot of these local municipalities and the bonds for local and state governments are basically saying, that they're not going to be able to make good on their debts.
Who's going to bail them out?
It seems to me that the Fed's going to have to bail them out because they're bailing everybody else out. So, because if that were to be that the tip of the iceberg there, where they're like one of the first ones and somebody defaults and they don't get pay people back, everybody's going to be crying wolf and say, well, I got to get my money out of there.
Sure. Now, Meredith Whitney, I think a year or so ago, had made a pretty gloom and doom prediction about a large number of muni bonds defaulting. That hasn't happened. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
And I think a lot of people think that it can't happen.
Well, I think a lot of things that you and I have been talking about are inevitable, but they're just not imminent.
Exactly.
Meaning that eventually piling debt upon debt just makes the pile higher. So when it falls from a higher height.
Yeah, and we've spoken about the proverbial kick the can down the road.
And that road is a dead end.
Exactly. Yeah, doomsday, believe it or not. I don't know, and we don't know. And like I said about interest rates, I said that it's inevitable that they have to start going up at some point.
You see the power of the Fed to keep them down, though.
Right, and I think that the Fed will keep this constant manipulation as long as they can. It's when is the rest of the world going to start to look at the United States and realize that we are pretty much in the same situation as everybody else.
Well, not just the same situation, because we're much larger. We're in a worse situation.
Definitely in a worse situation, except that we have the actual printing press here.
I think that Greece probably could sell half their islands and make up their debt.
Yep.
The United States can't do that.
No. And interesting, Louis, because I had pulled another article off of zerohedge.com, The article is titled "The First Crack: 270 billion in student loans are at least 30 days delinquent." Why I find this I think this is kind of highlights on where we are as far as the job market's concerned and where we're headed. And the article starts out back in late 2006 and early 2007. A few people were warning anyone who cared to listen about what cracks in the subprime facade meant for the housing sector and the credit bubble in general. They were largely ignored, as none other than the Fed chairman promised that all is fine. A few months later, New Century collapsed, and the rest is history. Tens of trillions later, we're still picking up the pieces of housing, and the housing market continues to collapse. So that was one bubble, and now they're reporting that there's about an estimated $1 trillion in student loans out there right now. And it's growing at a $40 to $50 billion nut each month.
And, Ryan, there's no asset behind the student loan other than the guy or gal who doesn't have a job.
Yes,
At
correct.
least the home you can foreclose and try to get some of your money back. You've got kids with student debt, $100,000, $200,000. They graduate and don't work for 3 or 4 years. How are they going to pay that back?
Yeah, and who will pay that back? Because it's backed by who? The taxpayers.
The government backs them all.
Right. So, in essence, they're going to pass that bill on. You're going to pass that bill on. You know what I mean? And
for purposes of the election, I mean, people are predicting that will be something that Obama will come out with, sometime late this summer, that we're going to forgive or restructure some of these loans.
Yeah, and just to give you guys of $1 trillion, as many as 27% of those, so 270 billion, are now more than 30 days past due. The article went on further, and it's like, okay, why is this bubble starting to pop now? The whole student loan mess, and they went in, and it shows that the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimated that the current unemployment rate for people 20 to 24 years old is at nearly 14%, and for those 25 to 34 years old is at 8.7%. But actually, that number is not correct. The unemployment for 18 to 24-year-olds is 46%. So that would make sense that basically 1 in 4 student loans is now delinquent. The only option that most people have, Lewis, is to defer that loan out. Well, it comes a point in time where they won't let you defer anymore.
That's right.
So, and all the while, there's interest accruing on those loans. So, why I find this, it's very interesting because right now, if you look at Europe, and they basically said that in Greece, the same young adults, 18 to 24, is about 46%, and in Spain, 51%. So, we're in the same position as Greece and Spain as far as the young adults and their employment situation.
And you know what a lot of young adults are doing is they're taking advantage of their unemployment to go back to school.
Right.
Or more debt.
Yep. And as far as...
And what's interesting is that going to school no longer, or college, provides you with any marketable advantage in the job market. It's just a place to go and spend money and perhaps have a good time.
Right.
But there's no real return on a student loan the way there was 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, now you have a student loan and you have no asset other than a diploma.
Well, and as far as I can see, okay, so this is a very troubling thing for me, and as far as real estate's concerned, Lewis, because, okay, so we have all these, 46% of 18 to 24-year-olds are now unemployed, right? So,
are they going to buy houses?
Yeah, when are they going to buy houses? Because we the people that are buying homes now are people that are employed, and we know that with the lending, restrictions are tightening up day after day, and you have to be in a job for the most part for 2 years consistently in order to be able to get a loan. So
right. In a normal housing market, what happens is, and would have been expected to happen with the baby boomers, is they move out of their houses, their larger homes, as they go into their retirement years.
Right.
They downsize, and then the younger generation comes in and buys up those houses.
Yeah, and
they're not going to be able to if they don't have jobs. And
not to mention, Lewis, that we have all this government manipulation and the Fed manipulation of interest rates that we don't really have a clear, a true market per se. This is like something that is being tinkered with every day. So we don't. People that probably might not rent are choosing or might rent are choosing to buy because of the payments, and it makes sense because the payments actually cheaper to buy now than it is to rent. With this statistic of 18 to 24-year-olds are at 46% unemployment, I mean, really, realistically, for them to be able to save up money, I mean, that puts them, maybe into their 30s before they're able to buy.
Right. This type of intermeddling with the market actually creates a situation which is advantageous for the banks and advantageous for those who can take advantage of these low rates, have the money. But for the most part, most people are not benefited from this low interest rate environment.
Yeah.
And generally what they're trying to say is they're doing this for the benefit of the health of the economy. It's not helping anyone other than the banks and the few that are able to go out and get a loan at this low rate. And we've been telling our listeners that if you can get a 30-year mortgage, in this 3.5%, 4.5% range, you're going to do well even if the price of your home goes down because you're locking in your cost of shelter and rents are going to rise as inflation rises. So that's a good deal, but it's a good deal that most people can't take advantage of. And the problem is, I think you've been pointing out on this show, is that a lot of people think they can take advantage of it because we talk like this, but they talk to someone like you, there are certain programs that can help them get these loans. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, there's more than, a handful full of first-time homebuyer programs that are out there for, all income ranges. The important thing is that, I'm not trying to just say that everything is negative out there. There's a lot of people that are employed, especially in the D.C. metro area. But what I am trying, I think I want to kind of emphasize is that I think that this type of information that's not being put out there to the public, I feel like, home values are not going to be able to keep increasing over a period of time, knowing that this is the employment situation and that it's important to lock in your low interest rates right now. Very important.
Again, if you can.
If you can. And it starts by just reaching out to a professional. 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. When we come back, we're going to jump into Bank of America's pilot program, REO to rental. Is that going to work when we come back?